This is the relatively new Canon 90D. Canon New Zealand very kindly sent this to me to have a play with and see what I thought of it. I have owned and operated the Canon 80D, which is what I'm shooting this on now, for about 3 years. So I was really keen just to see whether this is worth an upgrade from the 80D or just my general thoughts on this new camera. Now, instead of doing my usual sort of sit down at my desk in my garage studio, which is actually just behind there amongst that mess of gear in my garage, I thought it's actually a beautiful day here that I thought I might actually get out on my mountain bike down here and go for a ride and give you my thoughts on the camera that I've been playing around with the last couple of days, and I've made a few notes. So let's go. How's that? It's got my focus. It's always a bit of a tricky one for it, but I fully trust the Canon dual pixel autofocus. Seems to always, well, it probably still is the best video autofocus out there at the moment. So to me specifically, the things I was interested in this camera over the 80D, or the upgrades I guess in terms of shooting video over the 80D, would be the 4K uncropped video that the 90D here can do. It now has some image stabilization and can shoot high frame rate. So, and of course the Canon colors. That's what I'd like to cover. Right, I had great visions of being able to keep riding and doing these great links as I was moving along, but that went out the window because this track is actually quite, I don't know if you can see it down there, it probably doesn't show up on camera, but it's actually quite steep and technical, so, and I'm sweating already. Back to the camera. So the Canon 90D, for those of you that don't know, obviously the successor to the 80D, and it's essentially maybe Canon's last DSLR style in this particular family. So for shooting video, it's fantastic. It's got the flip out LCD monitor, you can plug in an external microphone, and it has headphone jack monitoring, and this one obviously has 4K video, uncropped video, high frame rate recording, 50p and 60p, and obviously you can set it in full manual exposure. So rather than tell you about it, obviously to me the proof is always in the pudding, i.e. being the video quality. So here's a quick montage of some video shots around my local town. You'll probably see me getting progressively more and more sweaty as I'm biking up this hill. It's kind of like a 20-minute uphill from town, probably almost equal parts pushing the bike as it is riding the bike, and then I sort of turn around at the top and head back down. What's that exposure doing? That exposure looks like it's overexposed me a bit. The picture, so the picture quality, it looks great, especially the 4K looks great, which I thought and knew it would. I mean, the Canon colors still, I think, are a really nice color combination. The 4K, I guess, if I was comparing this to the 80D, obviously you've got 4K, but it's not, I have to say it's not significantly more. In fact, I did a couple of studio tests, because one area that I was particularly interested in is if I had the 90D for doing my indoor YouTube videos, you know, I'm at the desk there, the 4K will hopefully lift the quality. So here are some direct comparison tests I did between the 90D and the 80D. Okay, this is one area I was particularly interested in, comparing the Canon 80D, which I'm shooting this on now with a 17 to 55 f2.8 lens, and this is obviously in my garage slash studio. I use the term studio in the loosest of means, and I want to test, this is shooting in 1080, and I wanted to test the 90D shooting in 4K. So I am going to swap out the 80D using the exact same settings to the 90D in 4K and see what the image quality looks like. So let's have a look. And now I am on the Canon 90D. Now everything is exactly the same settings, everything was fully locked down manual. This is probably the most controlled test I can do. So everything is running manual, and all I've done is swap out the cameras. So I've got identical lenses, everything is locked down to manual, full manual exposure, ISO, white balance. The only thing running on auto is the dual pixel autofocus. So how does that look? I'm just looking in the viewfinder here, and yeah, it looks pretty good. I guess the one thing I do like about the 4K, that the 4K gives me the option to crop in like this, and then back out to this, for example, if I'm doing a long monologue, which I sometimes do on these videos. So it gives you, I guess, the 4K, especially if I am, and I still do generally, edit my videos on a 1080 timeline. So the shooting in 4K gives me the ability to crop in and out. So it gives you that as if it's almost a 2-camera cut in, cut out. Right, I'm pretty much at the top of my ride now. So picture quality wise, if you compare like the shots I've just shown you, comparing the 80D and the 90D in a completely locked down studio situation, comparing the 4K to the 1080, and admittedly I'm always running this on a 1080 timeline, there wasn't as much difference as I thought actually. Great to have it, and thank you Canon for 4K uncropped video, but yeah, there was not a whole, I could not see to my eye a whole lot of difference between that 4K 90D and the 80D's 1080p. Also, another point of note though, if you're after this as an adventure camera, you can do better. The form factor is not great. Every time I get on my bike, I have to take off the microphone off the top, put the camera, stash the camera in the wee Gorilla Pod that I've got running it here, stash it in my bag, or put it in my backpack, it on my back, then take it off and assemble it all again. So there is better form factors such as the wee mirrorless cameras for adventure style shooting perhaps. Now here's something also to consider if you're looking at this camera, especially if you've come from other Canon cameras or a Canon 80D. This was like an old glove. I had to keep stopping in, when I was using or comparing the two cameras, I had to keep stopping and looking at the badge on the 90D, because the 80D and the 90D are obviously so similar. I could just jump straight onto the camera and start shooting straight away. I knew where all the controls were, all the menu functions were virtually the same. So that's something to consider if you're looking at perhaps the 90D over the 80D. And also, another big one here is obviously the 90D has a lot of competition in this mid-class area now, such as the Sony A600 or the 6400 for example, and perhaps the Panasonic G9, and even the Canon the Canon M5 Mark II, which uses the identical sensor to this camera here, the 90D. They're all competition. However, one thing you should remember though, if you're jumping ship, is I could literally bolt on all my existing Canon EF mount glass. So I could take the lenses straight off the 80D and put them straight on the 90D, so that I had no extra costs. Whereas, for example, say I went with the Sony or the Panasonic or even the smaller Canon M5, I would have to change lens systems. These lenses, without a lens adapter, I would be buying new lenses. So that's a cost factor, whereas I could just get this body only the 90D and I just wham, chuck all my existing EF lenses straight on it. It is obviously a very solid option if you're a vlogger, and I did a couple of wee tests. Now here's another usage this camera might get used for or picked up for, and it's a mid-range price, but it's actually a really good mid-range, it's a bit early, sorry, offering for vlogging. I have got the cheap Canon 10 to 18 on there. I've got a Rode video microphone on the top. It's got the flip out monitor, and I've got the image stabilization. This lens has STM, but I've also got the image stabilization turned on. The other thing I was interested in that the 90D has over the 80D is the image stabilization. Now I tested this and I'll cut to those tests now. Okay, I am in vlog mode on the wide 10 to 18 Canon lens, and I have no image stabilization turned on this bright sunny morning. And now same again, and I have the standard digital image stabilization enabled. How's that looking? And now it's on the enhanced digital image stabilization, and just looking in the viewfinder or the monitor, the LCD monitor there, it looks like it's cropped in quite a bit. So how's that look? And to me, I've got to be honest, I wasn't a fan of the electronic image stabilization. Firstly, it crops in, so if you want the wide lens, then you're going to lose it progressively as you go more and more into the standard and the enhanced image stabilization. And I didn't actually like the effect. I think it's more organic disabled. I found it when you had the electronic image stabilization going, it was almost jittery, very mechanical sort of movements when it was going, so I've switched it all off. I'm actually getting eaten here by sandflies. For those of you that may have visited New Zealand, especially the West Coast or the South Island, we have a little bug called a sandfly which bites you, particularly annoying. Now, the other thing obviously is high frame rate. Thank you very much, Canon, for catching up with everybody and throwing in high frame rate. So I'll show you some high frame rate examples now. The 100 frames a second, which would be 120 if you're in NTSC country, so 100 is a PAL high frame rate that we get. I thought it was okay, nothing special. It looked, to my eyes, it looked actually a little soft, not too bad, but my biggest complaint I had about it is that if I was out in bright sunshine trying to shoot it, it was extremely hard because you lose autofocus and sound when you're running high frame rates. It's really hard, you've got to manually focus, and I found it really difficult to get sharp focus on what I was trying to shoot the high frame rate of, especially in bright light, because you are unable to use the viewfinder. You've got to use the LCD monitor on the side of the camera, so especially in bright light it was really hard to try and figure out what was sharp and what wasn't. It was just really hard seeing that monitor in the bright sunshine. Right, I've made a few notes here. Now there's one thing, the compression or the data rate. Canon has crippled it a little bit actually on this camera. For example, on the 80D you had options of IPB and All-I. Now All-I was giving you a slightly higher data rates when recording video, and on the 90D you only have the IPB, so the data rates when shooting, for example, 1080 like in 50, or for example, sorry, in 25p and 30p, it is right down at 30 megabits a second. Now my GH5 can shoot at 100 megabits a second and up, and that actually counts for your image quality. And for example, when you're shooting in 50 or 60p on this camera, it's at 60 megabits a second, and 4K is at 120 megabits a second, which is pretty good. And those data rates I found, especially if you compare the footage out of this to higher data rate cameras such as my GH5, that actually counts for a lot. Pricing for this camera. Now I've got some notes here that I wrote on my phone before I came on out in here into the bush. So to buy the Canon 90D body only in New Zealand, it is $2,199, and in the US it is $1,149 for the body only. To compare that, for example, to the 80D, New Zealand it's $1,649, and in the US it is $899 for the body only, so a couple $100 more for the 90D body. Now the competition, for example, the competition in its very own Canon camp, the M6, now I keep on saying the M5 before I apologise, I meant the M6. The M6 Mark II has the same image sensor, I believe, as this camera, so theoretically the image quality is identical, and that body only is US $849, so a bit cheaper for the smaller mirrorless setup, running the same image sensor. However, you are going to have to change or buy new lenses if you don't have that lens system or a lens adapter. The Sony A6400, another competitor I believe for this camera, and that is US $998 for the body only, so again a bit cheaper. The Panasonic G9, US $1,197, so slightly more expensive. So that's some of the competition for this 90D. Now some of you that know me from this channel know that I shoot a lot of real estate video, and I didn't get a chance to test this for real estate video shooting. Now I would have no reservation in saying yes, it would be a great camera for that, especially combined with the Tokina 11-16 f2.8 wide lens. Now I shot on my 80D with that lens and the 80D obviously, and it was great. And this I believe also has a slightly better low light capability, and here's a quick couple of examples. Right, I'm going to wrap this video up now. My final thoughts on the 90D. Obviously it is a fantastically spec'd camera now for shooting video with its 4K, its high frame rate, image stabilization, external microphone adapters, the flip out LCD monitor, which I think is essential for a lot of video applications these days. Would I upgrade from my 80D? And I would probably say no, I wouldn't. It's not, to me and for my needs, it's not significantly better. Yes, the 4K video is better, but it's not significantly better than my existing 80D. But however, for those of you out there that want a 4K shooter in that mid-range and you want the colors, then it's a solid option for you. Thanks for watching, thanks for your time. I hope you subscribe and like this video, and I will see you in the next one. The things you do for the shot.